Welcome, Sun Prairie. I'm Nick Zweifel. I'm your Dane County Board Supervisor. And it's been a real honor for me to be able to serve you on the Dane County Board and represent the city of Sun Prairie. And as I've been serving you, I thought to myself, maybe some of my constituents and those of you who live here in Sun Prairie might not really know what it is the county does for you and your family. So I started this show called Supe Talk, which will be on KSUN, your local cable station, and my YouTube channel. And I thought it'd be interesting if I went out and interviewed all the people that make Dane County tick from all of our departments and the other politicians that serve you. And I thought it'd be fun for you to be able to meet them and hear from them what it is that they do for you on a daily basis. So I'm sure you don't want to sit here and listen to me talk. So I say I grab my coat and we hit the road and go out and meet all the people that make Dane County tick and work for you and your family on a daily basis. So come on, let's go. Let's get started. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Well, welcome, Sun Prairie. I am Dane County Board Supervisor Nick Zweifel, and this is my show, Supe Talk, and I think this is the second episode. My show is normally focused around things that affect Dane County and Sun Prairie. Today is a little bit different. It's sort of a special day because I'm going to be interviewing our Superintendent of Sun Prairie Schools, Dr. Tim Culver, and our very special guest, our Superintendent of the entire state, Dr. Evers. So I want to welcome the two of you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
And one of the reasons is I started the Education Task Force was one of the first things that I initiated when I got elected to the Dane County Board, and I have the pleasure of knowing that Dr. Culver is going to join me on that task force. And there's some issues in education in the state and in Sun Prairie in the education realm right now that I thought maybe it's worth doing a show and talking about and maybe clearing some things up for the people of Sun Prairie and giving you two a chance to have your voices heard other than a school board meeting or the newspaper or a commercial. So I want to thank both of you for sitting down with me today.
So, thank you. Great to be here.
And we're going to jump right into it. And, I'm hoping that we just do this conversationally so we can just flow through this. So if you feel like interrupting or interjecting a point, feel free. But the first thing I would like to talk about is charter schools, because it's a really hot topic here in Wisconsin and in Dane County. The difference between charters and vouchers. I'm also an educator at DeForest High School. That's my real day job. And I've noticed as an elected official and as a teacher that a lot of the public doesn't really get what the difference between the two is. So I'd like to have a conversation about charters and vouchers first, if that's okay with the two of you.
Yeah. Let me start out. And first of all, a shout out for Dr. Culver and Sun Prairie School District. I've had an opportunity to visit a couple times and always been real impressed and know a lot of the folks in Sun Prairie, and they're very supportive of your schools, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
The whole difference, it's interesting to bring it up about people don't understanding the difference, because I find even educators don't have trouble distinguishing between vouchers and charter schools. And I'll start out with charters from a statewide perspective, and I think there's something like 240 charter schools in the state of Wisconsin, chartered by 97 school districts. And I think there's close to 40,000 students in the state of Wisconsin that attend some sort of charter school. And what they are is they're chartered by local school district boards for the most part, and I'll explain the difference in a minute, where they think there's some unusual reason to try something different. Like if the community wanted a special school on environmental science or possibly at-risk school or something like that. It's just a special focus, a project-based learning school. They find that they may accomplish that focus quicker if they have a charter school where they can focus exclusively on that. And in the past, there's been federal money to kind of help support that and spur that forward. So that's the vast majority of charter schools in Wisconsin are chartered by local school board. There's a handful in the Milwaukee area that are chartered and run by University of Wisconsin-Madison or Milwaukee and the city of Milwaukee and there's one in Racine-Kenosha area that UW Parkside is the authorizer for that. So there's a special relationship with between the authorizer and the charter, and for the most part, they kind of negotiate what rules and regulations they'll follow. And as I said, for the most part, it's worked out well in the state of Wisconsin. So that's the charter school realm. The more controversial piece is around school vouchers, and in Wisconsin, it's a hot topic. I just spent 2.5 hours at Joint Finance Committee talking about it, so clearly there's an interest in it. And in the state of Wisconsin, vouchers primarily go to people initially in the Milwaukee area and now in Racine for kids that come from impoverished backgrounds, that they could essentially leave the public schools and take money with them to a parochial private school and spend that money for their education. There's all sorts of controversy around it. Clearly, there's those that say that it's around privatization, and there's those that say, well, why shouldn't poor people have the same opportunities to make these choices as others? So it's really controversial, highly emotional, as we went through today, and but there is a distinct difference because the voucher schools are not part of the public school system, whereas the charter schools, for the most part, are part of the public school system.
Could you also mention about, because special needs vouchers have come up too, could you touch on that quickly before we?
I don't know if I can do it quickly, but I'll talk about it. So anyway, there's the regular vouchers, and then the governor in this present budget proposed special needs vouchers, which would go to parents all across the state of Wisconsin. They wouldn't be localized to a certain locality like other vouchers are. And essentially, parents of kids with disabilities would get approximately $15,000 per student to go to a private school and have services provided there. I think that's frankly a dangerous experiment. I'm really opposed to it. First of all, it would cost school districts money. If a child leaves Sun Prairie School District for services in a private school, it would take $15,000 with them. And so it would reduce their budget by $15,000. But more importantly, the big picture is that with the special education vouchers, essentially parents lose their federal and state rights at the private schoolhouse door. They don't have the same rights that they do in the public schools. That frankly makes, I think, special education in public schools so strong, as parents are actively engaged and we're obligated to engage them around their students' individual education plan. Whereas in a private school, that wouldn't be the case. And same with kids. Essentially, they have guaranteed services in a public school system. They surrender those rights at the schoolhouse door, private schoolhouse door. I think it's a really dangerous experiment with our most vulnerable kids. It's going to cost public school districts money. And on top of it, I know this is getting in the weeds a little bit, but if a student would leave Sun Prairie to go to a private school with a voucher for special needs, not only would $15,000 come out of Sun Prairie, but Sun Prairie, under federal law, would be required to backfill that $15,000, even though the student isn't there in the special education program, essentially taking it from someplace else in the school district. So it's kind of a double whammy. I think it's bad public policy. I think it costs districts money, but most importantly, it's not good for kids.
And then, Dr. Culver, so from a local perspective, are there charter schools in Sun Prairie? Has it been talked about? I know our school board just recently has been talking about a position on vouchers, and and how do these things, from a local perspective, how do you feel they may affect the taxpayers in Sun Prairie or your budgets?
There used to be a charter school in Sun Prairie. Was what's now called the Prairie Phoenix Academy. Our alternative school started as a charter school. That charter expired, and the board and the school district kept it on as a program, so it's another program now. And so periodically, a couple times in the last few years, we've talked about did we want to start a charter. We had a task force that looked at it. From a school point of view, it's the board is authorizing a group of people and maintaining control over the funding and the outcomes, and basically a charter gives the board the right to create, I would compare it to a contract. We'll contract with this group of people, but they report back to the school board, so it stays part of the whole school system in our situation. And my experience in Sun Prairie is there wasn't a critical mass of people that said, we really want a school where children learn Chinese from kindergarten on, or some of the other kind of variants. People in Sun Prairie sort of have rallied around and said, our schools are great, we want the programs in our school. So that's what I tell people is, like, you can have a program or you can have a charter. It's not that much different. This charter just has a group of people and a little bit more authorization, but you can do the same idea with a program inside of your school. The vouchers are, in my opinion, a very dangerous thing. I mean, I believe public education works best because we're all pooling all of our resources to educate all kids. And if you start peeling off some of the resources for private purposes to do that, all of a sudden you're educating different kids, and different kids have different levels. And the private schools have, we have some great private schools in Sun Prairie. If people want to send their children to private schools, we support it. We work with our private schools. But to begin to peel off part of the funding of that out of the educate all kids because people want to do that is a very dangerous situation financially. And I also think, the issues of a private school, what kid do I want to take? I can take a kid, I cannot take a kid. So it's like there's a lot of things in private school that aren't being managed or controlled by, like, a school board, like local government. And so it creates different kinds of situations. I grew up in Arizona, which probably, the way I've seen it, has like the wildest voucher system in existence. And it's just been grievous to me to see what's happened to public education in Arizona because of this kind of Wild West privatization of, you have a storefront, you want to start a private school, do it. And I think it's a really bad path to go down. But Dr. Evers explained it so well, is vouchers are about, I tell people, a voucher is like a check. You're going to give a check to the private school to educate the child you want to go there. A charter is like a contract with the school board to create a program inside your school district.
Yeah, and that's Dr. Culver's got it exactly right. It's good synergy between a charter school and a school board, and if that synergy starts to dissipate, the school board can say, well, okay, we've tried this charter school and it's over. In addition, if vouchers came to Sun Prairie, for example, and they're not in line for that, the governor has identified 9 other school districts in the state where he believes that schools are in such a shape that they need vouchers to improve choices for kids. But if they came to Sun Prairie, it would increase property taxes here. In Green Bay, the Chamber of Commerce there estimated that if Green Bay became a voucher site, that it would increase their property taxes by $1.3 million. I mean, somebody is going to pay for it. The state is chipping in like 68%. The rest comes from the school district. School district will have to levy taxes for it. So it's really, the discussion around vouchers always bothers me. It's not the philosophical business. It's just people are so set in stone on this issue. When we talk about vouchers, that just sucks the air out of the room. And Tim here has all school districts in the state. We're working on a Common Core state standards. We're working on new assessment systems, new interventions for kids that are struggling. And all of a sudden we get wrapped up into this conversation around vouchers and who's in charge and who's on first. And it really is it's an unhealthy conversation. It bothers me. Another thing that's a concern, and I'm not picking on the voucher schools in Milwaukee, but this has been a 19-year experience there. And the original thought was competition would raise performance in the Milwaukee Public Schools, and that necessarily hasn't happened. If they've had some improvement recently, it's because of direct interventions from the school board in the community. And if you look at the chart of achievement for schools that have, private schools that have vouchers, and there's 20,000 kids in these schools, so it's not a small number, so you can make some conclusions. And you look at what the Milwaukee Public Schools performance is, it's about the same. In many cases, it's not as good.
So the voucher schools in Milwaukee, that 19 years,
yeah,
and they're not performing on any better level than
right.
Milwaukee.
And so, I understand choice is a really important value, but what I'm fearful of is that, and Tim kind of alluded to it, is that, in public schools, we're about the common good. We take all kids, we raise them to the best level we can. We hopefully provide adequate resources from the state, which I think is a little bit of a struggle now. Rather than choice in and of itself is a superior value, even though it hasn't been proven to increase achievement. It is a concern of mine, but that's the way our state politics are working now. We just have to have a good conversation around it.
And here in Sun Prairie, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we, our high school, crown jewel of, one of our crown jewels of our city, wasn't that the city passed the largest school referendum in the state's history? Is that correct, or is
I
it?
believe at that point in time, yes. I don't know if that's still the record, but it was more than just our city, the school district. But yes.
So I think, as far as Sun Prairie is concerned, when I see that, I think our public schools are pretty important to this city, and our school board may be taking a position on the voucher. Is that a meeting coming up, or I've heard about it? Maybe you could clarify if people want to contact a school board member or come to a meeting.
Our board had a discussion at the last board meeting, and they're preparing a draft letter to our legislative leaders' position on vouchers and funding both, and that'll be Monday night, March 25th,
Okay.
6:30.
Well,
I just have to
No,
interrupt
go
you.
ahead.
You talk about Sun Prairie High School. I've had a chance to visit it, and this will show my age. The very first YouTube video I saw was of the Sun Prairie High School lip sync.
Oh.
That was one of the most
lip dub.
lip dug. That's
Right.
the dub. That's right. But the reason it was so special for me is it just epitomized what is good about Wisconsin high schools and Wisconsin public schools. Kids are engaged in all sorts of great activities in a positive manner, and it's that stuff that happens outside the classroom, interaction with students, with each other, and with their advisors and coaches and extracurricular activities. You just can't substitute that for stuff. That's really important things. And actually, I've gone across the state and talked about it so many times. I'm sure we actually got some additional hits just because of my pitch. But
Thank you.
Yeah, but it is special for Sun Prairie. But it tells a great story about our kids and how special they are and how good they are in Wisconsin.
Well, you just transitioned into the next question perfectly for me. So I was trying to think of, what's a way I can transition this where it won't seem awkward.
glad
And
I
there you
could-
go. You
glad
just
I
did
could
it for
help.
me, and we must have been telepathic.
Yes.
What does make our schools high quality in Wisconsin, and what, from a state perspective, so we can get away from vouchers and everything that's controversial? What are all the things that are wonderful about at the state level that are working that people should know about, and what's special about Sun Prairie that's happening that maybe more people should talk about?
Well, from a state level, and we're absolutely engaged in this. The first thing is about the quality of the staff, the quality of the teachers, the quality of the administration, the quality of the support staff, and it's just critical. It's the most important variable in student success, and so it's important to have well-prepared teachers, and that's really a great part of what we do at the Department of Public Instruction. Is we direct how teachers are prepared in the state with institutions of higher ed. We license teachers, so it's kind of a quality control piece. And then school districts obviously have some obligations, and I know Sun Prairie does a good job of professional development as teachers are progressing during their career. And so quality staff is one. The next one I think is absolutely important is both parent and community engagement, and clearly this school has a great deal of that. Thirdly, it's adequate resources, and that's a struggle that we're facing at the state level, and I could go on and on about that if you let me, but I won't right now. But we just can't assume that education is going to happen in a resource-free vacuum. We have to have adequate resources. So I would say quality of the staff, certainly the parental and community engagement and adequate resources, engaged students come with the community also, and I think Sun Prairie is all of that.
What's great about
He
Sun
said it.
Prairie?
So. Ditto. No, that'll work. I guess what makes Sun Prairie great to me is, you alluded to the election, but we have to me, and why I've stayed here and why I like being here is this community supports public education and supports kids so well, whether it's at referendums or coming out to meetings or just being in tune with things. And because of that, we have these amazing outcomes for students. And the best part of my job, of all the parts, is meeting students and talking to them. Earlier this week, I interviewed a group of seventh graders from Prairie View and talking about what their school experience was and what their dreams were. And just, I'm always so proud to talk to the kids and find out what's working well for them in school and what they like and how they're being challenged. And they continually awe me. And we do a lot of amazing things. We have great teachers and great movement in different areas, but interviewing the academic decathlon kids, or we just had 11 kids that qualified to go to nationals in forensics, and the cheerleading team is, it's been kind of a year of championships and a lot of extracurricular stuff, which really is part. I mean, reading and math and all the stuff we are accountable for, basic skills-wise, is part of it, but it's this whole culture of finding something for all kids to do, whether it's culinary or whether it's today or it was yesterday, Math 24, or I interviewed a group of 5th graders that are going to the future problem solving to the state for the first time. And it's just like there's all of those holistic things are really hard to quantify. And don't get me wrong, test scores are important, but it's those kinds of exceptional outcomes in so many different areas that makes me really proud of Sun Prairie. And that only happens because there's great students, there's parents who are supporting the students, there's community who are supporting the schools, and there's teachers that are behind and coaches behind each and all of those success stories. So right now, this last few months have been just like amazingly kinds of great things happening that just make me really proud to be working for these people here.
Yeah. In turn, we at the state level, and I think this, I know Dr. Culver is very concerned about this too. We have to make sure that we attend to achievement gaps that we have in districts all across the state. In the state of Wisconsin, we have the largest achievement gaps between kids of color and economically disadvantaged kids and their peers, and we really need to turn that around. Clearly, Wisconsin is changing, and we have to attend to making sure we intervene early with kids that have difficulties and provide them the support that they need so they can catch up.
Well, I'd like to talk about that too for a little bit. So a couple things that I would like to talk about is the fair funding issue, and also Common Core and achievement gap. Well, let's start with achievement gap, because it is a big issue, and I know you could do a whole 3-hour show just on achievement gap stuff. But I would like to just get some of your ideas about. I know you and I were at a meeting, and I'll let you talk about it on Saturday morning about things that one of our elementary schools is doing to close the achievement gap. I know on the county level, we started a pilot program called ECI, Early Childhood Initiative, and Sun Prairie was part of that pilot. And what that is we're trying to find teenage mothers, expected mothers, and we're trying to get to those kids before the babies come, and make sure that they have services and support from birth until the kids are school age, which then joining forces for families would take over. And we've done it in Madison and we've done it in Sun Prairie. It's been an enormously successful program that county level that we have initiated, and hopefully that will pay dividends as far as achievement gaps go down the road.
Yeah.
But what's happening now, what can you tell us about Sun Prairie? What can you tell us about the state?
Sure. I'll start out. At the state level, well, first of all, I think people have to realize how different our students are than they ever have been in the past. And frankly, I don't know what your free and reduced price lunch rate in Sun Prairie is, but statewide it's approaching 50%. I mean, it's almost heard of. That's like exponential changes. I was just at Joint Finance Committee today, and Senator Olson, who had visited several schools in the Milwaukee area, was just profoundly moved by the fact that, there's 5% of the kids in that particular school, 10% were homeless. And many of them were English language learners. Many of them were students that were 6th grade age and have never been to school before. And so what's coming through our doors now is different than in the past. And
I could add to that we've identified over 1,000 homeless school-age students in Dane County
Yeah.
as well.
So things have changed, and so it's taxing resources, and it taxes our professionals to have those provide those services. But statewide, we're making some progress. We're really working on early identification and identifying best practices as it relates to what are the best interventions, and just focusing like a laser on individual children and really customizing learning, I think, in the end analysis is what it's going to be. But I will tell you, engaging students still is the best way to kind of overcome the achievement gap, getting them involved in school, getting them involved with activities. Dr. Culver talked about career and technical education. I think that's hugely important for all kids. And so maintaining those options instead of narrowing options, I think, is really critical.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
Just locally, when I came here 15 years ago, we had roughly 40 students who didn't speak English as a primary language, and this year we have like 500. So I mean, just the proportion of that. We had about 8 or 9% of our students were students of color, and this year it's about 1 out of 3. It's almost 33%. Our free and reduced poverty rate is right around 30% to do that. So this district is sort of, in some ways, I don't know how it occurs to others, but like we've had a lot of growth. We've almost doubled in size, but proportionately it's been diverse student populations. And I think, part of it is retooling your thinking and retooling your systems to understand the issues of equity and why is there disproportionate achievement. And some of our most troubling differences, disproportionalities for students with disabilities and students who don't speak English, and in some cases students of color, and say, why doesn't the school system work so well with that? And so our approach kind of has been somewhat in professional development, understanding equity, doing a lot of CREATE training, which is provided by a grant and DPI. All of our schools have gone through the CREATE team. We just recently applied to join the Minority Student Achievement Network, but we have a thing called the Sun Prairie Way. We always like to make things a little different. So we're calling it the More Students Achieve Now locally to do that, because it's more than just about minority students. Right. It's about any students. And it's also more than just the test scores again, is you have to look at your activities and say, you look at your band, you look at your, because all those things, as Dr. Beaver says, those engage kids. And if achievement scores are one thing, but if you look at the activities and there aren't clubs, there aren't kids participating in clubs, there aren't kids doing that, you have to help look at all aspects of your schooling and say, what are the barriers? What makes it not welcoming? What makes it institutionally, denying people have access to opportunity to learn or participate, as the case may be. What you were talking about, and I actually, because I just wrote for the MSA and application, we had to make a list of what we were doing, and so I was like, we were like brainstorming the things over the last 5 years is. So in Sun Prairie, in the last 5 years, we've initiated partnerships with United Way, Centro Hispano, the Urban League, Big Brothers and Big Sisters just came, and programs called Schools of Hope, which mobilizes the community to get involved in tutoring and achievement connections, which is more of a mentoring program at the secondary level. You were alluding to partnerships with the YMCA for what's called the community schools. Disproportionate achievement of students isn't just a problem of the schools. It's from when a child is born, and do they have health care, and are they living in poverty, and are they living in a place where they speak English. So sometimes it's like our kids are in a context and they're with us for a certain number of days and a certain number of years, but they're in the societal context of what are the disproportionalities outside of school, from birth to 3, the early childhood initiative, for example, or what their parents experience in terms of how the barriers their parents face. So sometimes it's a little bit like when the word achievement gap, which I actually try to avoid saying, is like disproportionality outcomes is of different groups, is just like we think, that's a school problem. The school should do this. Well, and the school does do these things, but the community has to be part of that solution too. Right. So the community schools is sort of what the WISE initiative is wrapping around it right now too, to bring in different community agencies, dental care, food, parenting, and not necessarily during the school day, right, but after school, and trying to use our beautiful facilities, which are used already for Boy Scouts and everything, but to specifically focus on the children and the families who are disproportionately affected by the way things are in society right now. And so it's real exciting. I don't even know if you know about this, but the Y is partnered, and we have these community schools model. And so what Nick was referring to, we have a community engagement where about 20 or 30 people come together and talk about, what are we doing and how can we do this? And now we're going to expand it to another school. So that indirectly but importantly engages the community in talking about why are there disproportionate outcomes for children of different color, children with disabilities, children who speak English, and so forth. We recently started parent networks. We have had an amazing event in February, the African American Parent Network. They wanted to celebrate for the very first time ever Black History Month from a community base. And so there were about 200 or 300 African American families came to our high school. Actually, they were at Cardinal Heights, the old high school. And people, community members, and it was literally by and for our African American parents who wanted to network, and they wanted to get together and they wanted to talk to each other. And I was lucky enough to be invited, and I told people it was like for my 15 years here, it was like one of the most historic things I've ever seen. It was an amazing gathering. And looking at different kinds of curriculum, response to intervention, it's like we just started a program last year called AVID, Advancement via Individualized Determination, which is a program to find kids in the middle who are probably the first in their family to go to college, and starting in 8th grade, give them support so they can actually be on track when they get to the AP classes and be ready to go to school. And that's been really exciting. So I could go on because this is a passion of mine, and we've been really focused on the whole issue of equity in our schools. And yet we still feel it's not enough, because you have to keep these things going. And my goal is for Sun Prairie to be the district that qualifies as the district that does diversity right, that we don't have disproportionality, that because you don't speak English means that your test scores are in the bottom or you're excluded from activities. So we have a lot of passionate people, and I'd say it's right now a real roiling issue, and it's got lots of pieces to it, because you still are serving the kids who historically, white middle-class kids who have come to expect schools to be this way. They can't lose. You have to show diversity. Everybody's winning here. It's not focusing only on these kids, it's everybody wins. And so it's a major work, but it's the schools and the community.
Yeah, it's a great discussion to have. You're doing a great job here.
What I appreciate, I taught at-risk kids for the first 3 years I taught, and comments that you've both said just make me smile, because after teaching at-risk kids for 3 years, there was one thing I knew helped with achievement gaps and helped with those kids, and that was getting them plugged into their community. Yeah. When those kids feel plugged into their community and plugged into their school, they achieve. Yeah. The concept to me is really simple. It's just how do you go about doing that? Yeah. And part of that, to keep all this stuff going and to keep things going at the state, is funding, right?
Yes.
Good
we don't
segue.
And we don't want to tax everybody to death, right? So fair funding is in the government's budget proposal, and fair funding. So could you describe the current state of funding, and what are your views on what our schools need to succeed with funding, and give us some ideas about that, and then maybe you could.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about that right now, and people start thinking about this, because decisions are going to be made in the next few months that will determine whether all the good programming that Dr. Culver just talked about continues to happen. Because we're kind of a dangerous place, I think. My proposal in my budget, and I brought it in 2 years ago. I'm going to brought it in this year. If it doesn't happen this year, I'm going to bring it in 2 years from now. It's quite simple. It deals with three things. One is it makes sure that every child in the state of Wisconsin is guaranteed a minimum amount of state aid. Second of all, it starts to move away from using property value as the sole determiner on how much money school districts get. We need to focus on the poverty issues that we've all been talking about. So we would be weighting students, WEIGHTING, weighting students that come from impoverished background, and so essentially it would shift money across the state of Wisconsin to more impoverished school districts. And third of all, it'd be more transparent. Right now, in my opinion, the tax levy credit, I know we're getting in the weeds now, but tax levy credit shows up on your property tax bill, but what it does is it goes to the municipality first, and the school districts have to artificially raise their tax levy in order to capture that. That is not transparent, and it's very disequalizing. So that's been our proposal for 4 years running. 2 years ago, we had some support around it. bipartisan, and then Act 10 and the budget bill kind of blew it up. This time we're still hoping something positive, maybe one of the three pieces will come out of that. But long term, we're facing a budget right now where there'll be no additional money for public schools. The money that's going into public schools now in the governor's budget will go to primarily voucher schools. They will see a $1,400 per pupil increase, whereas the Sun Prairie's of the world, because the governor is keeping the revenue limits at zero, they will have no additional money to spend. So clearly that's an issue. Clearly it's a one around priorities. Clearly it's a one about privatization and all that goes along with that. If people care about their public schools, I sure would encourage them to connect with their legislators on this issue. It's something, our budget had additional money for the voucher program, but right now it's like a 23 to 30% increase for them, zero for public schools. And what it does, it pits kids against kids, programs against programs. And there's $1.5 billion anticipated surplus in the state of Wisconsin. And a lot of it going to roads, a lot of it going to income tax cut that would give the average family a $7 a month income tax cut. I mean, it's not a good priority. We need to prioritize our schools. That's what makes our democracy strong, our economy go, is our public schools and our public school kids. So we're encouraging people to get actively involved now. This could be as bad a budget as it was last time.
I know we really appreciate your leadership, because sometimes right now it doesn't feel like anybody's speaking up and saying, what do the public schools have to do this?
Right.
It sort of feels like, how low can you go?
Mm-hmm.
What can you not do? And I know for us, we're a quite fiscally conservative community. We've budgeted actually below the revenue limit, unlike some districts. And so with the current governor's proposal, could we survive a year? And what will happen is the local tax levy will go up until we get that. But after a year or two, in the way my business person described it, it's like a strangle budget for us. So, could we go a year and raise local levy we'll get probably at the revenue limit, but it just is incredible to me that you would say no increases. And so we're talking about some of these initiatives, not cutting them immediately, but beginning to look forward and say, well, what can we not do? But we also have been talking about other initiatives, like we really need to incorporate the concept of instructional math and reading coaches in our elementary school to keep working on achievement. And so do we even talk about this initiative? Because if we're going to look at strangling in 2 or 3 years, we can't really add this, or do we add this? And so I really appreciate your leadership in just saying this is not a reasonable way to have your public schools funded for the long run. And we're lucky in one aspect. There's districts that are worse, that are at the revenue limit, that would have severe cuts right now. But it's not a good system for us, and we would literally be strangled in 2 or 3 years and go backwards at that point for us.
And there's school districts across the state that have taken a look at this, like Sheboygan, which is a kind of medium-sized town. They're looking at $5.5 million deficits in a town that size. It's going to be extraordinarily difficult. And you're right, not every school district will feel it this next year, but it will put us on a path that is going to be hard to recover from. And last time the issue was, well, we don't have any money. This time the issue is we have money, what we're deciding not to provide it to public schools. So choices are being made, and I think inappropriate ones for our schools.
Last topic, Common Core. If we could combine Common Core, what is it? I think a lot of people might think, well, we're just changing a test and changing a textbook or something like that. And then the state report card. So if we could comment and somehow bring those two things together a little bit.
We'll try to do it in a short period of time. And I'm real interested in Dr. Culver's response around these issues. But first of all, Common Core state standards are standards that 46 states in the United States have adopted in reading, English language arts, and mathematics. And frankly, I think they're game changers. I think it's a real step in the right direction. We basically will be focusing on the important stuff, and instead of a curriculum being a mile wide and an inch deep, teachers are going to be able to really dive deeper around applying skills and content, and we believe our students will be better prepared. Connected with that is we'll be implementing a new assessment system in 2014-15 that will be online, much more descriptive and much more helpful, and also offering districts the option to have kind of formative and benchmark tests that they can use if they want to going forward. So we'll have a better data system, we'll have better assessments, we'll have better curriculum, but we're going to be raising expectations. The issue now is around college and career ready, and in order to get to that level, we need to raise expectations for all schools and all kids. Little daunting, to say the least.
From both of our perspectives,
yes,
too.
a little daunting. The school report card is connected. All these things are connected in some fashion. We have the new standards. We have the assessments to judge how well we're doing against those standards, and essentially an accountability system that kind of determines and gives us a snapshot of how well schools are doing. The school report card, we did a pilot this year, and overall I thought it was a worthy effort. We've got a long way to go, and that's the thing that concerns me about the governor's budget, is that a lot of the things that are kind of radical as far as changes, the gatekeeper is the report card, and the report, whether the 9 school districts have vouchers in the state of Wisconsin, it's because of how well they did on the report card. Well, the report card, A, was never developed for that, and B, they're not prime time. They're pilots, and we're trying to work out the bugs. I'll give you an example. At the high school level, I think it's not a very good system now because we really don't have any measures. We have one measure, 10th grade test, that if I was a 10th grader, I wouldn't care about that test either, frankly. So and as a result, there's no way to show growth over time, and that's an important change here. Instead of looking at, if you don't reach this bar, you're failing, and if you're over the bar, you're not failing. Now we're actually looking at growth. If you're raising achievement to a significant level, it values it. And I know I'm going to go long on this, but I have to tell you, I think so. The report cards need continual work, and we said that up front that it was going to be continual work. And the reason is because I think it's a golden opportunity for the state of Wisconsin to talk about what they value in their public schools. Do you value music, art, and phy-ed? I'd say yes. If that's the case, let's find a way to incorporate that into not that we need to test in those areas, but we need to find ways of providing value to music, art, and phy-ed. Do we value career and technical education? I know you do in Sun Prairie. We need to show that that value has to be reflected on that report card. So over the next 5 or 6 years, I think it's going to be exciting times. I think we can make that report card reflect the things that Dr. Culver was talking about before that aren't necessarily measured. We can get them as part of the accountability system and show with great transparency what our schools are doing. I think we'll be farther ahead. The problem is we're starting from a limited data set, and we need to move forward into a more robust one.
It seems like there's always change going on, but this is we had a person from CISA 6 talk to us about this is like a perfect storm. The piece we didn't mention is the new educator effectiveness, which is the teacher evaluation component of all this. It fits in all these pieces, and I think it's a big change, and we're sort of working through it, and a lot of teachers and principals are a little bit nervous, but I think everybody agrees that it's good to have higher standards. And even the conversation when kids got their WKCE scores and they used to be advanced and now they're proficient, and what happened? Well, their skill scores going up, but just the acknowledgement that bravely this state has chosen to set the bar higher. I mean, that's been a good conversation with parents to do that. And when it impacts your kids, it's like, well, what does that mean, Right. But the conversation has been good, I think, and a lot of work is happening with teachers understanding and reframing our curriculums and updating different parts of our curriculum and so forth. But my personal sense is that people appreciate that the standards are higher, and they understand that, and it's sort of like the fly in the ointment right now is using the WKCE and this kind of gerrymandered, statistically organized system to do that. And the WKC, which is given in the fall, like for our high school, for example, they take the 10th grade WKC in the fall. They've been at our high school for a month or 2 months maybe.
Right. Yeah.
And so what does that have to do with the high school's accountability report? It really reflects, because our system has 8, 9,
Right.
12. So the report card for the high school has a assessment as a key piece that isn't really relevant. So I agree with you. There's some pieces. A lot of us are really interested how this new assessment's going to turn out, and you always have to wait and see how it looks and do that. But in terms, I think the Common Core philosophy is good, and if it's really designed to that would be good. I think it's be good that they're the ACT becoming the 11th grade assessment. I think that'll be a really clear benchmark instead of just kids who voluntarily take it, how kids are really doing. So it's definitely a lot of change, and it's, and then you all these other issues, and then now we're facing having no funding. It's like, okay, you want us to do this and this and this and this,
Yes.
and you bring us to this point of, okay, we want more of this and greater future evaluation, but you can't have this and this and this and this. It's that's a little bit disheartening in one aspect to sort of, we want to do this and we'll try to do this, but now, and some resources for these are in the budget, but just in terms of what the schools have to do locally with the way the budget's proposed is like, it's a little bit disheartening, I guess.
Yeah, we're asking more and more
Yep.
and getting less, and it's just not right. And kind of to compound it, and I want to talk about the accountability system in general. If we use it as a hammer, it ain't going to work. If we use it as a flashlight to illuminate where strengths are and where weaknesses are, that's fine. But once we get into this political game about how we use the accountability system, that's where I get a little shaky, to be honest with you. And I will fight as much as I can to make sure that the accountability system is used what it's designed for, whether it's teacher evaluation or school evaluation. That's to support struggling schools, find best practices, raise all boats. But if it's used as a hammer, not only will people reject it, but with no resources, people will really reject it. So we're really in kind of a tenuous place. We need to make sure that we do this right. Lots of changes, most I've seen in my 36 years in public education. They can be very positive changes. We just have to make sure we do it right, and we're kind of on that tipping point right now.
Well, I would like to thank both of you
That's great.
for coming in, and I know you both have busy schedules, so I want to thank Dr. Culver, our superintendent of Sun Prairie Schools, and Dr. Evers, the superintendent of our wonderful state, which I think has one of the best public education systems in the country.
Right.
So thank you for your time, and this has been another episode of Soup Talk, and if you have any questions for us, please find us on, I'll post websites on this before I post it, and contact us. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you think, and remember to get out also on April 2nd. You have local elections, and they matter, which is not next Tuesday, but the
Tuesday
following
after.
Tuesday, April 2nd. So
That's great.
thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Wow, now that was a lot of fun. I learned a ton. I hope you learned a lot too. And you know what? We're going to do a lot more of these. So I hope you stay tuned. I hope you check out my YouTube channel and my blog and follow along and read what the county is doing on a daily basis for you. And, until next time, Supervisor Zweifel saying we'll see you next time on Soup Talk. Thanks a lot. Bye.